Now we're going to talk about grinders. Now we have a slew of different grinders, but we're only going to talk about the 4-inch hand grinder and a bench grinder that we have in the classroom. So whenever you're using these, the first thing you got to stop and think about is the safety. All right, we have our shield. All right, it should be by the equipment. If not, let one of the instructors or myself know and we'll find it for you. Hearing protection, again, hearing protection is also located up at the OSHA safety area. And if you like the little spongies, you can wear them or you can wear these. Then your gloves. Now, we're going to first talk about the 4-inch grinder. Here are some different attachments that you can use on this. One is a cutting wheel. Now I highly recommend that you buy high-end cutting wheels or sanders or grinder wheels. It just isn't worth the cheapness of spending a couple more bucks and buying really solid ones. Alright? These are all made in America. They have a much higher standard than what you're going to get out of Harbor Freight. Alright? Even at Home Depot or Lowe's. Alright? So, everything basically is a 4.5-inch grinder on this. But you notice that compared to a grinding portion wheel, we have a cutoff wheel. Alright? Now, both of these will fit there. And there shouldn't be an issue with it. I always like the reinforced type. Alright? This is a sanding disc. It's great for getting off the basic rust off of metal before you paint it. Alright? Saves a lot of time versus a hand sander. And then we have our little concrete cutter. Alright? This little concrete cutter is great for small places. It does a real great job, and as long as you're not rushing your work, because of course this is diamond bit and it will heat up, and you don't have water on this, so be very if time's a matter, don't use this. Go rent one that has water. So those are basically the 4 types of grinding wheels we have. What we're first going to show you is how to do it on a round piece of stock. Alright? Now, things that you need to know about the grinder. Whenever you're grinding, be sure that you're always grinding away from people. Know what's around your environment. Here in Arizona, we have a difficult time because the wind will blow up debris, it dries out, students start grinding, and all at once you have a little brush fire over on the side of the wall. So just always keep your eyes open for that. Don't panic, just go throw some water on it, take the hose, water it down, and you'll be good to go. Alright, so let's discuss our vices again. We're going to flip this over. Open it up. Insert our pipe. And we're going to just grind right here. Even though we're inside, there's no students here. Alright, so we prefer that you do all your grinding outside. Matter of fact, we don't prefer it. It's necessary to do that because there's just too many people in and around this area. So, you must have both the safety glasses and the shield on when you're grinding. Alright? Your headphones. Now, before we get all into that, let's explain some of this equipment. Alright, Your grinder is 4.5 inches in diameter. You're only using the edge of the grinder. You notice why? Because if you don't, you're going to end up ruining this bolt that secures the grinding head to the post on the machine. You have your shield, all right? You always want to protect yourself, and away the sparks go the opposite direction away from you, all right? The other thing is, be sure that you can rotate this depending on the situation that you're in. It takes 2 Phillips, little screwdriver, loosen it up, move it around to where you want it. You can also remove this handle and put it up on top if that's what you wish to do. The other thing that you might want to look at is, this is a nice, it helps when you're changing cutting wheels. All right, if you push this down, it will lock the blade into place. All right, just hold it using the proper wrench. Just pop that off. It comes off very, very easy. All right. Check the core. Be sure everything's good on it. Then you got this, what we call the idiot switch. It's a 2-step operation. You got to push this down and then push down your trigger. All right? Otherwise it won't work. Never, never set this thing down just to let it run down. All right? Just take the time to hold it. It runs down pretty fast. All right? Then your gloves. All right? So we've checked the area. We know that there's no flammable items in there. When we go to do this, and again, I'll show you, walking you through it, because you won't be able to hear me very well. But you notice that I have it at a very slight angle, like a 15-degree angle, maybe even less. All right? And as that's rotating, those sparks are going to be flying off in this direction. I go very slowly, and I don't put a lot of pressure on this. Once you put too much pressure on this and your steel turns blue, then you've changed the chemical makeup of it. All right? And then now you're going to have to grind all that off, which means that the metal's thinner. All right? So let's not get all into that. But you don't want to sit there and run up on that nut. All right? Back off. Use about a 1/2 inch of that blade. All right? And about 15-degree angle. Now I understand that there's a lot of stuff to put on, where, da-da-da-da. But hey, safety is our #1 concern here. Okay. Again, I'm only using about a 1/2 inch of the blade. I'm always tilted at about 15 degrees. I have to hit my idiot switch and push down prior to this taking off. See, so it stops pretty quick for you. Alright, so I check, I turn it on. Now all I'm trying to do is get the surface material off of here. But I'm going to put a lot of pressure on this, and I'll show you what I'm talking about with the bluing. Now, that little spot doesn't mean a lot, except that now this area is weaker than all the other structure. So now you're going to have to come back and grind over this to get rid of that bluing. And it's going to take a very light grinding process. All right? But again, now this piece of metal is thinner than the rest of the metal. And that may come into play later on down the road. But this is where you make the mistakes. And you always need to play with your tools so that you fully understand what you're dealing with here. Because every tool works a little bit different. All right? Next, I want to show you using a plate on how to grind. All right? So now I'm going to just put this in my vise. And we're going to do a little surface grinding on the top. Same process, nothing changes, just a bigger surface now. Now the other thing that you might find out as you're grinding, depending on the type and the amount of carbon in the steel, will determine the amount of sparks that will be flying out. All right, so this was very low carbon steel. A higher carbon steel may have more sparks. That's one giveaway. All right, so the stronger that metal, the more sparks it's going to send off to you. Stay comfortable, relax, keep the tool away from your chest or loose clothing. Nice circular motion. Now what you do notice is the surface, it takes time. You just can't rush through this thing. All right. The main purpose of it is to get the surface rust off. All right. A lot of people use grinders when they're welding, and they say, "Oh well, if the weld looks crappy, then I'll just grind that off." Well, yeah, but that's a lot more work. It's time consuming. That's not what you want to use the grinder for. All right. You want to use the grinder to either cut off bolts to speed up the process because of rusted shut, or sand down the surface, or cut up some little pieces of concrete block. All right? So, please be aware of all of that, all right, when you're working with this stuff. Now what we're going to show you is the bench grinder that we have, and it's portable, but we've secured it to a table so that people can't just move it around. Because there'll be some times when you see a tool, all right, that is mushroomed out or whatever, and we want you to fix that. All right, it's very easy. Just give it to me or somebody else, and we'll do it. But the whole purpose is this is your facility, and we want you to take care of it. All right. Be sure everything's put back in the proper place before you decide to take off and go over to the next section. Okay. Always wrap up your tools properly so that they're ready for the next student. I'll meet you over at they call it a pedestal grinder or a bench grinder. All right, now we're at the bench grinder. Now, we're going to just work on one side because the other side doesn't have the shield, and it's on order, so hopefully it'll come in before class starts. All right, this is just one of those 8-inch multi-purpose grinders. All right, you got two types of wheels on here. We have one fine, one coarse. You want to, if it's really bad, you're going to start off with the coarse. Otherwise, just use the fine. You always want to keep your guards. All right, first of all, make sure that your plastic or glass is not pitted. All right, and that everything is tight on this thing. Then check your base plates and be sure that they're in good position. And you want maybe a 16th, no more than an 1/8 of an inch away from the metal. It also depends on what you're trying to cut. Okay? The other thing that you want to be sure of is if it's vital, you want a flat surface. And normally I go through these things about every month and just straighten it out myself, but maybe you know, you needed to use it and I didn't get to it yet. We have what is known as a dresser wheel. All right, this dresser wheel has these little kind of teeth on them. All right, and what you do is you put this up against the face of the wheel, all right, and bring it across evenly. And what that's doing is just cutting off the surface and making everything flat. So what you're going to see me do is dress the wheel, then I'm going to put down the dresser, and then I'm going to pick up the piece of steel and I'll show you how to go about grinding it. All right? Let it get full RPMs. Then what you want to do is you put your hand down here like so, and you'll see when it cuts. All right? And what you want to do is start from one edge and go all the way across. One edge to the other. Now, typically, 3 passes will do fine. Now, I want to round my corners on my steel. I barely touch this. And I just rotate it like you're making cotton candy or whatever. Alright? Again, you don't want this thing razor sharp, but you're going to come back with your rat tail file and clean it out. Alright? Now when you shut this down, I want you to stay with the equipment. It may take a few minutes to stop, but we need to be sure that it does stop to be safe for everybody. Then of course I don't have to tell you that you need to clean up anything that's you've made the mess over. All right. If something is missing from this area, you need to let me know or let one of the instructors know, and we'll just jump on it and get it fixed for you. All right. But again, make sure that you allow this to stop. All right. And that the wheels are dressed, everything is tight on it. My rule of thumb is I don't trust anybody that used something before me. I want to be sure that this thing is operational before I put my hands on it. All right? If you're trusting the other guy, best of luck. I've been burnt one too many times. So therefore, I just prefer to do it right the first time, just as if I was putting that tool together. All right? That's my way. You have to make that call. But remember, this is a training facility, and you're a better person than I am if you believe that the guy before you did everything right. All right? So please make sure that this stops before you move on.